Welcome to the first ever live streaming podcast episode of Buckle Up Betties. I am the head Betty, Ashley Morrow. I am so glad that you guys are tuning in. This is like quarantine madness. We have literally lost our minds. My husband Skip is the sound engineer and host of the Guy Pod, and he and I were sitting around talking, going, we still need to be making episodes, but how do we do that and still have guests and bring everybody on? And he has rigged up like this magnificent way for us to still come to you guys. And this is probably the first time some of you have ever seen my basketball face. So welcome to Buckle Up Betties. I have my good friend and personal nurse practitioner. When I say personal, like he doesn't just like work for me. He like has a clinic, like I'm his patient, but I like to act like he's my nurse practitioner. Thad Boughton, welcome to the studio, Thad Boughton.
Thank you, Ashley.
Wait, I think Skip's about to hit a fancy button that makes yeah, there we go. There we go.
Love it.
Yes. We are extremely advanced here in the Buckle Up Betty studio, also known as our Allstate agency conference room table. Anyways, so to sort of let you guys know what this episode is about the shame of being fat. Now, if you follow my Ashley Morrow page or have heard me, you're in my private shopping group and have heard me talk at all about my weight loss journey. A big part of my weight loss journey has been meeting Thad and sort of getting on the right course. But I think that sharing the story is really important. And I'm going to tell you the story and tell you why I've decided that it's important. Now, I know that the video and audio are a little different, that it's going to be a little bit of a lag. Don't at me. Don't tell me. I know I can't do nothing. It's quarantine. Okay. So 2018, the fall of 2018, my husband was moving back. He had to move to South Alabama for a job and he was moving back and we were getting ready to get engaged and get married. And I told him like, I think I want to go on Weight Watchers. Like I want to lose some weight. And when we weighed the first day and I stood on that scale and I weighed 315 pounds, I was like, say what, Betty? Like I would have thought like 280. Like I thought 275, 280. When I saw that 315, I was like, Lord girl, you fattening hog. We've got to go on Weight Watchers. So I was on Weight Watchers for a couple months and I lost, I don't know, it's probably on there 4 months, lost 30 something pounds. And then we decided to open our retail incubator and that went like way downhill. And so I gained about 20 of that back over the course of 2019. And so in January 2020, Thad announced that he had started a weight loss clinic that was in conjunction with the wellness and diabetes clinic that he does every day. And so I went to go talk to him and got a wellness visit because I'm 38 years old and it had been years since I had like, I don't know, my cholesterol checked or whatever. I'm a doctor's kid. So I've always just like, if I got sick, I called my dad, he called me something in, and that was really it. Like I've never had health issues. I don't feel bad. I'm a borderline narcissist. I don't even feel bad about myself. I'm just sitting here going, hey, I'm probably heading towards type 2 diabetes because my family has it and I'm fat and like, I got to get over that. And so I called Thad, and in the course of Thad and I talking, probably no surprise to anyone who's ever met me, like I started getting diarrhea of the mouth and I started telling Thad all of these things that had been going on with me that I had never told my husband, that I had never told my father, who's a physician. And the most important of that, and the part that I want to share with you, is that for probably at least 3, if not 5 years, I have not felt satiated from food. So I would eat food and I would never feel hungry. And I would, not even like it was just like, I was just always hungry. Like I could always just eat. And so I would eat so much at meals, and I would feel so ashamed because I'm like, why am I not full? And it was like, well, it's because you're fat. And if you weren't so fat, then you wouldn't be hungry, because fat people are always hungry because they're fat, because their stomachs are too big. And so if you weren't a fattening hog, and if you weren't lazy, and if you weren't undisciplined, you would lose weight. These are the things that I told myself for years. For years, I told myself that there were all these things mentally wrong with me. Now, don't get me wrong, there probably are a lot of things mentally wrong with me. And in fact, when I told Thad this story, he goes, I'm not saying you're not crazy. I'm saying that you're not crazy about this. And fair. But when I was telling Thad all of this, he said, you do know that there are conditions that would keep you from feeling full. One being that there's a hormone that's released when you eat that tells you, hey, stop eating, I'm full. He's like, your body's not producing that. Okay, fair enough. So this is all like me and Thad talking, and I think, wow, this makes a lot of sense, and I totally get it. And hey Skip, will you look at this? Will you let him know? Um, anyways, so I was telling one of my best friends who is a nurse practitioner, not a nurse practitioner, she's a nurse anesthetist. I was telling her about this, and this girl has dieted most of our adult lives, knows a lot about nutrition. She's a nurse anesthetist, so it's not like she's dumb. And she looked at me and she said, you know what? I feel the exact same way. I thought the exact same things about myself. I feel the exact same way. And I thought, you know what? If this beautiful, brilliant, educated nurse anesthetist has not made this connection between the shame and the guilt and telling ourselves it's because we're fat and because we're lazy, useless, whatever, then how many other women have not made this connection and they're delaying getting help, going to the doctor, getting health care? And so that's why I think this story is important, because I don't know that we're talking about it in a way that is sort of free of shame and free of stigma, okay? Because you just assume, well, it's me. I'm a fattening hog. I can't quit eating. But there really may be something else going on. And so that's why I wanted to bring Thad on, because he's been such a big part of not only me being able to tell this story, but to be a great sounding board for um, just like my healthcare moving forward. And I really would encourage you, if you're sitting here going, whoo, girl, you're preaching to me, you're talking to me, I'm feeling that. You need to go find a Thad. If you're here local in the Shoals, literally go to Thad. You can go to him. He's on 6th Street in Muscle Shoals. But Thad, so tell us a little bit like about your background and what made you decide to focus on this area of health and wellness.
Well, first of all, I just want to say kudos to you, Ashley, for being so candid about those internal conversations that we have with ourselves, particularly about our weight. Uh, I think that's really important, and that's going to allow people to kind of open up. Um, you know, as far as the weight loss portion to my clinic, um, every day I treat diabetes, and diabetes falls within those top 6 metabolic conditions that prevent individuals from losing weight easily. Um, when it comes to weight loss treatment, um, we we start by looking for those metabolic conditions that can affect your ability to lose weight. I think number one on the list I would say is underactive thyroid or hypothyroidism. Pretty common. Um, Metabolic condition, your thyroid controls every single metabolic function in your body. So obviously it's going to impact your ability to lose weight. For a lot of people that are carrying excess pounds, pre-diabetes is big. Yes.
Literally, we get my paperwork back the next day with all my blood work, and he was like, "Girl, my A1C was what, like what is it? A 6 is you're diabetic, and mine was like a 5.5." And he was like, "Heifer, we got back this A1C truck up." Also, he didn't call me heifer. I
No.
that in for drama.
So we do blood tests. A1C is part of that. Another test that I do often is called a C-peptide. And not to get too technical, but a C-peptide can be measured in equal parts to insulin. And if you have elevated insulin levels, if you're insulin resistant, that is definitely going to make it more difficult for individuals to lose weight. And that's important because when you're choosing medications and individualizing treatment, you want to make sure you go with the medication that, number one, is going to work, but number two, that's going to be safe, you know. But if we're not finding out that root cause, then people are going to get frustrated very quickly, and that's just going to add to the problem.
So that's it. So when I had gone on Weight Watchers in 2018, beginning of 2019, like it was easy just because I was eating a lot healthier. So like the weight was coming off. Um, but I was still hungry. Like I don't know how long I could have done that. And it's not the Weight Watchers program. Weight Watchers works and it worked really well for me, but it was really hard to be hungry all the time. And it's not like I was walking around like, I'm hungry, give me food. But it was like when I would sit down, like to never feel satisfied. Um, like I can remember, so like when I went to see you, you were like, no pizza, no cold cereal, no pasta, you're done. Like, you're done. And I was like, okay, I get that. But I called my mother and I said, Mama, he said I can't have pasta. And all I can think about your spaghetti. So will you make me like a last dinner? And I went to her house and she cooked spaghetti for me and Skip. And I can remember I ate two, and I've shared this with Dad, I ate two huge plates of spaghetti and four pieces of garlic bread, like Texas toast garlic bread, like significantly large pieces of bread. And I left there and I was still hungry. And I was like, this is not normal. Like, I can't believe I lived so many years telling myself, well, it's just because you're fat. It's just because of you. Like, there's something wrong with you in the head. Like, why did it never dawn on me to like call a doctor? Like, literally, my dad is a doctor. It would cost me $0. And so I think that's what's so important about this conversation is sort of talking about like these lies that we tell ourselves because it's shameful and because it's hard to talk about. Like, it's hard to say, like, there's this stigma of being fat that is like, well, if we don't talk about it, then it's not true. Like, literally, whenever I like speak to groups, I always talk about this. I designed a clothing line. And the first collection that I did was all curvy pieces because no one just loves to make curvy clothes for some reason. I'm like, look, fat girls got to have clothes. Like, I don't know why people are acting like we just want to run around naked or wear a medium when we need a 2X. But I tell people all the time, I'm like, look, if you are a man or woman in love with a plus size woman, please do not tell her that you love plus size people. She literally knows. Like, you don't have to tell her she's fat. She literally knows. Like, and the fatness becomes like this otherness that you sort of learn to like live with and live around. And I think that the shame of it from society and culture and your friends and your family and the magazines and all these other things that keep you from delaying greatness, whether that's better health or feeling better about yourself or whatever it is that's holding you back, like those conversations I was having with myself kept me from having a real conversation with somebody like that. And I think that one of the things that I appreciate about you, Thad, is that you do recognize like that internal conversation is one of the hardest parts. It's almost easier to take your blood work and say, well, this is what's wrong with you. Let's put you on this path. But if you're not willing to have the conversation, then you're stuck.
Sure, sure. So I want to talk a little bit about what's going on. As you mentioned earlier.
Oh, yes. I waive all my rights to HIPAA, so you can talk about all of my stuff. I'm saying it right
All
now.
right, very good.
I don't know if we need to put that on the scroller at the bottom. I am waiving all of my HIPAA rights. Let's talk about my stuff. Let's do it.
Yeah. So in Ashley's case, we did find an elevated A1C, as you have already mentioned, and an elevated C peptide. So right there, I knew that you were deficient in a hormone called GLP-1. Okay. There are, and I'm not going to get too scientific here, but there are two hormones that get released when food passes from the stomach into the small intestine. GLP-1 is one of those. Other one's GYP. That hormone communicates with the pancreas, other parts of the body, but particularly the brain, and lets us know that we're satisfied, that we're full. If you do not have enough of that hormone, or have very little of that hormone, then just like in your case, you're not going to feel full. Um, there's a poster that I have in one of my exam rooms that talks about, well, you may be on a diet, but your brain is not.
It's
There's a lot of science behind that.
so
Yes.
share with them, because when you and I had first talked about this, and I was sitting in your office, like, was it the Oprah ugly cry face? Like I was like, like I'm like, that's like, oh my gosh, like this is real. Like this is my patient now. You shared with me that scientists had started studying extreme weight loss patients, and that's where they started noticing this trend with the GLP-1. Did I understand that correctly?
Sure. So um, I think a lot of us know individuals who have had bariatric surgery or weight loss surgery, and even whether it be the bypass or the gastric sleeve, particularly with the gastric sleeve patients, they measured patients' endogenous GLP-1, the hormone, how much of the hormone their body was making naturally after the surgery, and found that those levels had increased, and their success in keeping the weight off after surgery was directly correlated to those levels. So, um, you know, there are many reasons to take these medications to initially lose weight, but sometimes they're also needed to maintain afterward as well.
And I think it's worth pointing out that like the medication that has me on, this is not a magic pill.
No,
Okay. It sucks. I probably text that every couple of weeks and tell him that I hate him and I love him and that I'm miserable, because it's some mornings I wake up and I'm so nauseous that I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to choke this pill down. And like the pill that I'm on, it's a pill called Rybelsus. Like you have to take it first thing in the morning, and you can only take it with no more than 4 ounces of water. And then you can't do anything for 30 minutes. And I'm like, it's miserable. So don't think that like there's this magic pill. I mean, I guess it is easier because it's not a shot. Like some of this medication that you have put me on is just now, like within like what the past year, become available in pill form.
correct.
So, but it's not magic, and it doesn't, you don't lose weight overnight. I mean, it's tough because you have to titrate up and your body has to get used to it. And I've had days where I was like, whoa, this is terrible. Like, I think I would just rather be fat, but then I don't. I mean, I, want to be skinny so I can be obnoxious and a terrible person. I'm going to be the most obnoxious skinny person ever. Like, if I could sing, I would probably be famous. I would be so obnoxious. Like, I can't wait.
Love it.
So, Thad, tell me, like, in your like line of work, like how much, like your weight loss clinic, like is it starting to grow? Like, are you seeing people come in? Are they having conversations like this? Or like what could somebody do to get prepared to have a conversation like this, maybe if they don't live here locally and couldn't use you as a healthcare provider?
Yeah. Well, knowing the statistics, at least here in Alabama, a large percentage of the people who have a BMI of 30 or greater, let me talk about a BMI just real quickly. BMI stands for body mass index. It's a tool that we use to assess whether or not individuals' body weight is healthy. It's not a great tool, but it is used by clinicians all across the United States. So I would start by finding out your BMI. If your BMI is 30 or greater, then it's more than likely time to do something about that excess weight that you're carrying.
And don't you have like a fancy machine that you can stand on, and it isn't that what I did last time I was in there?
Yes, that was a body composition analysis scale. That's one of the things that we use in our clinic.
It's depressing.
uh,
It says, hey fatty, here's where all your fat is.
but I would go to whoever your primary care provider is, nurse practitioner or physician, is go to them and have them review, your current health conditions, those things that you've already been diagnosed with, and see if there is something that's contributing to the difficulty with the weight loss. And if you've been on certain diets, if you've, you know, if you have a structured exercise routine and you feel like the weight is not coming off as quickly as it should, then there's a conversation that needs to be had. there can be an underlying or either misdiagnosed or underlying diagnosis that's not been found yet. And that's where the discussion needs to begin with your
Well,
provider.
and it may need to even, so that's the discussion with your provider, but I think there's also a discussion that you have to have with yourself, that you have to say, hey, you know what? I listened to that Buckle Up Betty story and that rang really true for me. Like if you're sitting at home going, holy cannoli, like I'm never full. Like I feel like I just eat and eat and eat and I'm never satisfied and you can eat large portions. Like there may be something else going on. Like, now don't get me wrong, I wasn't sitting around eating large portions of veggies. I mean, certainly the food that I was choosing was about emotional comfort. And so having to sort of recognize like, you know, this is a combination of me emotionally eating for comfort and having to say, hey, you're 38 and you're going to be a diabetic and you're going to lose your toes and it's not going to be fun. Like you got to get it together, lady. Also with, hey, there's something not ticking right for you. And so I think it's hard to have an honest conversation with yourself sometimes about that, but I think it's important because I mean, you're worthwhile. Even if you don't feel like you're making this huge impact in the world, there is somebody in your life that wants you to be around for a long time.
Amen.
And diabetes is a real fast way to either not be around for a long time or be around for a long time and be miserable.
Sure. Cardiovascular disease is another thing that affects our ability to lose weight. PCOS, I hadn't mentioned that one yet. Obviously, that affects women's fertility. And then
So,
for men, low testosterone.
so tell us about PCOS. Like, I feel like I hear a lot of women talking about having PCOS, and outside of the fertility issues, that's where they feel like they get stuck on their weight loss because the PCOS like almost prohibits them from doing anything. Like, what's the mechanism there? Like, without us
Sure.
having to go to medical school because I'm a podcaster.
Sure. Well, the direct connection is with insulin resistance. Um, and I know I've mentioned that with prediabetes and diabetes, but it's insulin resistance there. And it has to do with hormones. And now, remember, hormones are how our body communicates with itself. So typically, our body is constantly working towards a state of homeostasis or balance. And basically, the body's out of balance.
Hmm. Like the hormones out of balance
Yes,
or
absolutely. Typically, higher testosterone levels, they may present with hair in places that, you know, like facial hair, for example. Um, the way that the fat is distributed on the body is another sign. Acne, and of course, irregular menstruation.
well, speaking of menstruation, Shoals OBGYN, Thad, you are still taking weight loss patients, correct?
Correct.
We need to get you guys connected. Victoria is a nurse over there. We need to get you.
Great.
Victoria, you're a nurse, right? Or did I make that up? I don't know. I may have given you credentials that you haven't gotten yet. Whatever. I'm gonna go with you're a nurse. I just know you're pretty. Madison, I have PCOS. So I would really encourage you if you're stuck and you're going, hey, this is all of those things work together. Like I think that it has been so important for me to meet Thad, or if you're not here local to the Shoals, which we have listeners all over the world, you need to meet a Thad. You need to get a healthcare provider in your life that really hears you. When I shared this story initially on my Ashley Morrow page, I had people reach out to me from all over the country. And I had a lady reach out to me who said, 8 years ago, I went to the doctor specifically about this. Okay. And she said that the doctor looked at her and said, do you know where you don't see fat people? Concentration camps. You just need to quit eating. And I find that to be borderline unethical. Like I find that kind of medicine to be abusive. And so I would encourage you, one, mentally repeatedly kick that guy in the nuts, get rid of him. Like he's got to go. That's not a good healthcare provider. And then number two, the power of Facebook. You need to go give him a bad review and say what he said. That's not a private conversation between you guys if you don't want it to be. That is absolutely, we have to hold people accountable for their words. I get held accountable for my words every single day. And I think if you're a bully healthcare provider, you should be held accountable for your words every single day. She had not gone back to the doctor in 8 years. 8 years. So she may have something else going on completely that she's unwilling to have a conversation about. And so I would just encourage you. I would just like want to come hold your hand and hug you, but social distancing is the thing. Literally, if you have been told some terrible, like, forget that guy, forget that girl. She doesn't know what she's talking about. Like, go find you a real healthcare provider. Talk to your friends, talk to your family, talk to your neighbors. Find somebody that is going to advocate for your health. Like, you're true, not, it is unrealistic to say, well, you just need to quit eating. Well, yeah, that would help. But like at one point when I start eating again, like that's going to go out the window. So speaking of eating again, I don't know. I've lost a couple more pounds since I saw you a few weeks ago.
Great.
Which I should have lost more, but COVID. And I have absolutely fallen back to holy crap, we got to be preppers. You know, we bought like food that didn't have expiration dates for a long time. We bought, you know, comfort snacky food and like stuff that we could throw on real quick. Like we've got like jambalaya and black bean soup and all the stuff that really is not Weight Watchers friendly and my low carb lifestyle friendly, but it's like sort of like survival mode. And I don't know why fudge sticks are a part of my survival mode, but they 100% are. So I've really maintained and lost a little bit. But I think one of the things I want us to sort of talk about is sort of that difference between, hey, right now, this is an unprecedented, absolutely terrifying time to be a human being. Like quarantine and COVID and like the world has completely changed. Like our lives will never be the same. We now have terms like social distancing that are a part of our everyday vernacular now. And so how do we honor that part of ourselves that feels comfort from food during a time where we mentally and emotionally need the comfort versus not getting the quarantine 15?
Yeah, great question. So, if you find yourself overeating during this time, I guess I would ask, what is the underlying reason? I think probably for the majority of us, it's going to be stress. But if it's something like boredom, then I guess the first thing I would say is keep yourself active.
Or have you cleaned out your closet yet?
Have you cleaned out your closet? Or as guys, the garage, right?
Are all your clothes still in the chair? Don't act like you don't know what I'm talking about. You dump your laundry in that chair, and that's where it is. Is your chair clean?
Right. You know, for as far as stress goes, I would fall back on those things that have been a stress reliever in the past. Whether that's exercise, which I know some of you are saying, how could that be a de-stressor? So maybe it's just getting outside, getting some fresh air, some sunshine, taking a few laps around the block. For a lot of us, it's going to be our hobbies or diving into a book. For me, I love listening to music. So you got to find those things that help reduce your stress. When it comes to, go ahead.
Well, and I think, and I've sort of been on a roll about this. I like want to go throat punch every single life coach and celebrity who's like, if you don't learn to speak a new language or write your book during this time, it's because you're undisciplined. You know what, Karen? Stop it. It is absolutely 100% okay to do things right now that create comfort. And so, you know, for me, because I do find comfort in food and I'm sort of like off the off the Weight Watchers wagon for a second. It's like I do it for like one meal a day, and then the other meal is just a train wreck. And I'm trying to do better, but I do find that comfort in the food. So I'm trying not to eat as much of that food. Like get that little comfort fix and then be done with that. And so I think that we have to really honor that part. But then I don't want to come out of this and have lost ground. Like if I come out of this and I'm like within a couple of pounds of where I started, I will feel like, okay. Like I think that creating some space for ourselves. Like last night, 4 of my best girlfriends from high school and I have started a group. We have a group text that we've had for a while, but now we've started doing like a weekly FaceTime with each other. And last night it was one of our friends' birthdays, and I cried for like the first 15 or 20 minutes. I was like, it's just so hard. I mean, I own 4 businesses and we have employees, and I'm doing all these Facebook lives in our private shopping group, and I am so emotionally exhausted. But it's like I can't stop, because who knows how long this is going to be this way, and who knows, like, we've just got to really, but I have to learn to make some space for myself. And part of that space is not shaming myself for eating 4 fudge sticks.
Sure. If we could all come out of this and maintain our weight, I think we're doing pretty good.
I do too.
But also go back to the basics. When you're headed to the grocery store, have that list. Don't find yourself wandering through the grocery store. It's too easy to grab stuff that we know is probably not the best choice. Also, meal planning. I don't know if my wife's watching, but she knows that I'm probably the world's worst when it comes to suggestions for meals. But having an idea of what you're going to be eating over the next week is going to set you up for success. That's for sure.
That's a great idea.
Or meal planning or meal prepping. Cook for 2, 3, 4 days. Have that in the refrigerator, so that way you're less likely to grab that bowl of cereal at 8:00 at night.
You should know that I did stress buy Fruit Loops the other day because I just thought it'd make me feel better to have it at the house. And I still have not had a bowl of it yet. Like, I can't believe it. Like, I walk by it and I say, hey to Toucan Sam, but I still haven't.
That could be your cheat meal.
Yeah. Like, I love Fruit Loops. I'm a grown woman who loves Fruit Loops. I feel like that's the biggest confession I've made tonight. Like, when you said no cold cereal, I know you didn't mean like, don't eat the nut brand. Like, you meant you look like a Lucky Charms girl. Like, I know exactly what you meant, because it's literally who I am as a person.
Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
Oh, so good, man. Cold cereal is just the best. And there's no nutritional value. It's just like eating wet candy. It's so good. Oh, it's so good.
It is.
So I'm looking at I've got my phone out and I'm sort of following along. Victoria, yes, I agree not to focus on the scale, but to focus on inches. But considering that I've done one workout this month, I actually have not been keeping up with my inches. And that might be something. It was funny when I came to visit you a couple weeks ago, that Dorinda was measuring me and she was like, oh my gosh, you've lost like 6 inches off your waist. I'm like, girl, no, that's not possible. These leggings ain't falling down. I was like, I think you measured too high. And when she went back, she goes, never mind. You sure do look good though. So
that's part of the reason why we do the body composition analysis, is we're looking at things like percent body fat and percent muscle, because those numbers matter too. It is easy to get focused on that number on the scale.
So let me ask you this, because now, so I'm down from when I first came to you, I was at 299.8. When I weighed this morning, I'm at 277.8.
Awesome.
So coupled with the 315 that I started with, that's some weight. Why am I still wearing the same size? Like, how does that work? Like, why can't I say, hey, I want this front butt gone?
So I think the most frustrating thing about weight loss is you can't target weight loss.
Yes.
That's so frustrating. Yeah.
And yes, Melanie, you can ask questions. Skip is running that and checking out people's questions, and we'll throw up ones that need to be asked. And he is sort of our moderator. And then I'm trying to also follow along over here. So if y'all see me look down, it's me looking over here. But yeah, I always joke in my private shopping group that like the front butt, like it's all about covering the front butt, not showing the front butt, having something long enough for the front butt. And people are like, I've never heard it called that, but that's literally what it is. It's when your front is bigger than your actual butt. And that is probably the part of my body that I'm the most self-conscious about. Like, I've got big arms and I don't wear sleeveless. Maybe one day I will, but I feel like a lot of women have sort of fleshy arms, I mean, that front butt. It's like, how do I we're gonna get rid of this front butt? Dad, let's talk about front butts.
It'll happen. Just stick with it.
How much weight do you have to lose before it starts changing in your clothes? Because I mean, I'm still wearing some of the same stuff. I mean, some of it's a little bit baggier, but I don't feel like I've even gone down a size and I've lost almost 40 pounds. Was I just like stretching the test of the fabric before and now it's a little looser? Like, I don't understand how that works.
Yeah, yeah. So everyone's different, and obviously, you know, everyone's weight loss goals are going to be different in the percentage of body weight that they want to lose. Typically, to get those health benefits, that can start around about 7%. For most people, it's 10%. But we might set a weight loss goal that's somewhere around 20% of your current weight whenever you start the weight loss program. So when patients come in, I'll typically ask them, "What's your goal weight?" And I'm just kind of curious to see if that matches up with what the goal weight that I set for them. Although a BMI of 27 is still considered overweight, I find that most people feel comfortable with a BMI of 27. Now, that's not to say that we stop there. If you're able to reach that goal, we can continue on down to a healthy BMI, which would be between 20 and 24.9. But everybody's going to be different in the way that they feel. I've actually had patients go down to their weight prior to their first child, or maybe even their high school weight, and they found that they weren't comfortable there. And when they put on 5 or 10 more pounds, they actually felt better. So it's kind of interesting
So you're
how that
telling
works.
me that at the BMI of 27, these people are like, hey, I'm living my best life right now. I'm getting to eat some good food, but I can't eat it all the time. I'm exercising, but I'm not killing myself. Like, that's the balance that you have found for them. Like they're telling you.
Yes, I have found that they're the happiest when their BMI's around 27, which again, that's technically overweight.
So here's the thing. I'm not trying to be, I mean, I joke about how I want to be super skinny, but like really, I just want to not get diabetes and for my front butts go away. Like, I don't really know. So when and Keisha, we're definitely gonna get to your question. Like like when you and I sat down, so like when you say like when you're like looking at someone's chart, are you thinking like, okay, I think you need to lose this much weight? Because I told you my goal was to lose 100 pounds and to lose 50 of it this year. And were you like, yeah, girl, I'm looking at you, I'm looking at your stats, and that's what you need to do? Or are you like collaborating with the patient and saying, like, let's shoot for this or let's shoot for that? Like, how does that work in your mind?
Yeah. So the first thing I'm concerned about is if we've di- if we've identified anything health wise, insulin resistance, prediabetes, underactive thyroid, I want to get those numbers corrected. I want that A1C back within a normal range, or that C peptide back within a normal range. And then we'll start focusing more on the weight loss for aesthetic reasons. But obviously, I want to correct what's wrong metabolically and get those numbers back to normal.
Okay. So Keisha has a question. What can we do when you stop losing to restart the weight loss? Do you have any pro tips?
Yeah. So I think what she's referring to is kind of when we hit that plateau. And if you've truly hit a plateau, you have to have not lost any weight for several weeks, maybe even as much as 2 months. That's a long time. Weight loss is not linear. We want it to be. But if you feel like you're stuck, one of the first things I suggest, if you're not already doing it, is intermittent fasting.
Which, when you first put me on intermittent fasting, I called you after the first week and I was like, I cannot keep my head up. Like I'm like falling asleep and it was really hard for me. So I started intermittent fasting like 3 days a week or 4 days a week. And it was a game changer for me.
Sure. For those who aren't familiar with intermittent fasting, the most common is the 16-8 plan, where you have 16 hours, that's your fasting window, and 8 hours where you're eating. And that can really jumpstart your metabolism. One other thing is that although you do not have to exercise to lose weight, increasing your activity level, specifically increasing your resistance training, is another way to restart weight loss. I particularly like resistance training for women because if you're whether it's your own body weight, bands, free weights, machines, when you're doing resistance training, you're going to increase lean muscle, and lean muscle will burn calories at rest. That's really important.
So, Skip, I want you to put up Candace England's question, but I do want to address real quick Melanie and Trinity. I want to be careful about asking him like specific questions about medication or like do this for just diabetes in general, because he is a healthcare professional and I want to be careful about him giving healthcare advice to someone like so specifically. But Melanie, to answer your question, he treats diabetes period. So this is a nurse practitioner that you can see for diabetic care. And then he also has a wellness clinic, and then he also has the weight loss clinic. So those are not mutually exclusive, and you don't have to do the weight loss to get the diabetes care, or do diabetes and do the okay. So they're not mutually exclusive. So I would encourage you to call and ask those questions. And then Trinity, I'm not sure when you said, is there something out that is safe for diabetics? I'm not totally sure what that question is. That's why I'm not posting it. I don't know if you mean diet wise. I'm not totally sure what that is. So Candace is asking, what are some key things you look for in blood work to determine what is contributing to someone being overweight?
Yeah, great question. We want to look at thyroid labs. I definitely include those. We want to look at your fasting glucose. We want to look at an A1C. And for most of my patients, I'm also going to draw a C-peptide, which I talked about earlier. And then we could even look at a lipid profile. If you have high triglycerides and a low HDL, that's going to suggest insulin resistance, and that would need a little bit more, a little bit deeper dive to figure out what's going on there.
Yeah, what he said. I don't know what any of that means. I know I take my blood pressure every night because Skip takes his blood pressure every night, and we act like it's a contest because honestly, I don't know how we're so competitive. I don't know how there's like a brick left standing in our house. Like we don't fuss and fight, but we probably should because we're so both type A and competitive. And we literally compete to see who has the lowest blood pressure, which literally means we're the oldest young couple in the history of the planet, even though Skip's old. I love saying stuff like that when he can't say anything back. Oh, he could jump in, but he won't. So, what else should we talk about, Dad? You're smart. Like, was there something that when I asked you to be on this that you were like, I wish we would cover this? And I've been talking about myself the whole time.
Um, well, I can just tell people kind of what to expect if they were to come in the office.
Yes, do that.
Okay. So typically we'll draw labs before you come in. Now, if you've had labs drawn at your primary care provider within the last 3 months, we can oftentimes use those labs. There may be some specific labs that we want to include, and you may come in before your visit to have those done. We do treat weight as a health condition, so we would accept insurance if you were to come in. If you do not have insurance, we can still see you for weight loss. When you come in for your first visit, we're going to review those labs and go over any abnormals. We also want to look at your current medications too. We're going to do body composition analysis. We're going to talk about your BMI. We're going to talk about your percent body fat. We're going to talk about your muscle percentage. I also do basal metabolic rate calculation. Basal metabolic rate is the number of calories that you need to sustain normal body function. What I tell patients is it's the number of calories that you need to sustain your current weight if you were to just lay in bed all day. And then we also
talked about that, and I was sad. It made me sad because it was like, hey, Ashley, you can't eat a lot.
and then if you're active, I'll calculate what's known as the total daily energy expenditure. So it's your basal metabolic rate multiplied times an activity multiplier. And that determines your goal calories, your grams of protein, grams of carbohydrates, and grams of fat. Now, some people like to track macros. That's your carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. Sometimes people get overwhelmed when it comes to keeping up with those numbers. I can understand that. But I want you to know what those numbers are, because if the weight's not coming off like we expect it to, then it's time to kind of slow down and take a look and see how many calories you're consuming over a 24-hour period.
So when I had first come to see that, and he was like, okay, no pizza, no pasta, no cold cereal. Check. He was like, you need to go low carb. And I was like, low carb, like Weight Watchers? And he said, have you done Weight Watchers and had success with Weight Watchers? And I said, yes. And so even though Weight Watchers is not necessarily like low carb, it's very balanced. So it's nothing is super restrictive. And Weight Watchers makes a lot of sense to me personally, because it's like I get a budget. Okay. And it's not calories and it's not macros and it's not these things that sort of overwhelm me. It's like a budget of points. And so if I want to eat a brownie, I just have to budget my day and my week to eat that. And I get that as a business person, like how to, like that budget, like that makes a lot of sense to me. And I like that it's not super restrictive, that it's like, I never like, you ever get to eat bread again, because I don't really want to live a life that I don't get to eat bread. Like it would have to be like, Ashley, you're literally going to die if you eat another piece of bread. Like for me not to eat again, because like I love it so much. So I love that it just sort of feels like the way I'm supposed to eat, not like a diet. It feels like a true lifestyle change. And so I say all of that to say that if you're on the fence and you're thinking about Weight Watchers, I can send you a link and you will get a free month of Weight Watchers. Also, when you get a free month, I get a free month. So it helps everybody out. I guess I should like put that in there, that it's not totally altruistic, but it is sort of altruistic. Okay, we got a question. If you had your thyroid removed and are on medication for that, will that affect your weight loss program?
No, because if your thyroid medication is dosed correctly, then you should be able to be successful with weight loss.
That's a mic drop moment.
So that's something that we would look at first, are those thyroid labs, make sure everything is within normal range, and then we would proceed with a customized weight loss plan.
That's good info right there, sir. I gotta tell y'all, I just had this really awful realization that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. I completely forgot to put on deodorant. And I'm getting a little excited, like I was talking and like
Sure.
see somebody's face that's, not my husband and not my mama and not my employee Alyssa. And I'm like, whoops. Like I'm feeling a little sweaty. And I'm like, I don't think that worked out. I think I'm out. I forgot to put it on.
There's those sound effects.
Oh, anyways, I think it's important to share and to be real. And what is more real than realizing you forgot your deodorant? Awkward. Anyways, so Diabetes and Wellness Clinic of the Shoals, when you opened late last year?
We opened July of last year.
Okay. So you're coming up on your 1-year anniversary. That's exciting.
It's coming up. Yes.
Now, how long have you been? Oh, a question. When I was discovered with hypothyroidism, they did a different thyroid test than I had done since, and I feel sometimes like the dosage is wrong. What was the test they could have used? It was a rheumatologist that did it. So if you were going to test for hypothyroidism, what would you do?
Yes. So we look at TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, free T3, free T4. And then there's a couple other thyroid antibody tests that I like to do. It's hard to speak, be too specific here, but TPO is one, and we use that test to identify Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune condition of the thyroid. So I'm really not.
I feel like Hashimoto's is like having its moment, or have like discovered a way to test it, because I feel like I hear more and more people have Hashimoto's. I'm like, did the Hashimoto's people get together and have a conference and like educate a bunch of healthcare providers? Because I feel like I've heard more about Hashimoto's in the past 5 years than I have like my whole 38 combined.
You know, I suspect that it just what they didn't look for it, or the healthcare provider did not look for it when they first diagnosed an individual with hypothyroid, and it was discovered later. They've probably always had it, but then it was discovered later once the test was performed.
So years ago, I was having some issues with my thyroid, and I didn't know that's what it was, but my hair started falling out and I was having some fatigue, and somebody said, you should take prenatal vitamins to help with your hair. And so I called my dad, who's a physician. I was like, hey daddy, can I get some prenatal vitamins? And I literally heard the screech of his car tires, and he was like, why do you need prenatal vitamins? And I was like, because my hair's falling out. He's like, oh my God, Ashley, how about you bury the lead, right? So I had lost a lot of my hair, and then like it never really grew back. And so I've always worked a super high stress job. And so I was working at this pharmacy, and it was crazy and growing. I lost more hair, and then I was in this crazy marriage. Then my husband died and I lost more hair. And by the time like 2015 came around, I was almost like not bald, but it was very, very thin. And so I would go to these, like I would go to market. I'd launched Alchemy and I had my clothing line, and I would go and like you could just see like the skin, like my hair was so thin because it started with the thyroid because I wasn't going to the doctor normally and getting it checked or whatever. And it was almost like it just took too much to catch up. But I ordered, and I'll drop a picture in here. Let me see if I can do that. I don't know. I can do that while we're on here. But I ordered this hair helmet from QVC. It's called like the iGrow, and it looks like a bike helmet, but it's these big headphones, and it's like these laser beams that shoot at your head to regrow your hair. And it was insane, insane. It like regrew so much of my hair in like two or 3 months. Like, so it's supposed to be like a laser hair thing, but I didn't have time to go to a clinic. I was traveling a lot, and I would just like sit at home 2 or 3 nights a week and do these reports and have like this laser beam shoot at my forehead. And it's crazy. It's like FDA approved for like 5 different kinds of hair loss. And it was crazy how much it worked, but it all came back to that thyroid. Like it all came back to that. And it wasn't that the doctor didn't catch it in time. It comes back to this original reason why we're doing this, because I was not proactive for my health.
Yes, I was going to say that. So you hit the nail on the head there about not going to the doctor. When I turned 30, I'm not going to say how old I am now, but when I turned 30, I started calling all my friends or texting them. I say, guess what? You're 32. It's time to go to the doctor at least once a year. So if you're listening to this right now and you're 30 years of age or older and you've not been to see a physician in the last year, it's time to go. Be responsible. Find yourself a primary care nurse practitioner or primary care physician and go, because these things like to sneak up on you, so to speak.
Also, start
in your
using
30s.
aging products now. Like, go ahead and start the eye cream. Like, you won't be sorry that you got ahead of it. I'm just saying. My mom's a medical esthetician, and she put me on anti-aging products when I was like 30, 31, and I have not regretted it because I've gotten ahead of a lot of stuff because I've been on a good skincare routine. So Renee has the question, are y'all open now during COVID? So tell us what, I know you are open. I'm going to answer that. So tell us what you're doing right now. Sherry, so their clinic is on 6th Street. What's the address?
It's 1110 East 6th Street in Muscle Shoals,
Alabama, for our international audience. So tell us how you're sort of handling, because your clinic, you don't see the sniffles. It's literally diabetes, wellness, weight loss, correct?
Yes. So we consider ourselves a wellness clinic. We typically do not have people coming in for the common cold, for sinus infections, for flu, etc. We schedule patients right now. We're scheduling patients on the hour. So that allows plenty of time for us to be able to disinfect the office between. We don't have patients out in the waiting room together. If there is more than one person in the clinic for whatever reason, maybe they're coming by to get an injection, we have them come straight back. And we've been very proactive during this time.
Let me tell y'all something about these injections. So I don't know what I think is when I did that first video and I was talking about your services and you texted me and you're like, Ashley, that was so amazing. Come by the clinic. I want you to try our new injection one that we got in. I was like, you ever heard of a cookie? I don't like shots. Like a cookie would have been a way better award system. Did you forget that I came because I was fat? Like I want a cookie. So tell us about these injections that you're doing, because even though I don't like shots, they have sort of piqued my interest. And I know that a lot of physicians sort of around the country have sort of are doing some similar things like this. So I think it's worth talking about what it is and why you might want to have it in your routine.
Sure. So we started carrying these injections in our office um, because of patient request. Some of you may be familiar with them. They're called Lipo B or Lipoject, and it's a combination of B vitamins along with 4 amino acids, and they're really just to add a boost when you're changing your diet and starting a new routine. You may feel a little bit sluggish because, particularly because we do advocate for a low carb diet, and while your body's adjusting to that, you may feel a little bit more tired, a little bit more fatigued, and that's where the Lipoject or Lipo B injections come into play.
So, I may be, I don't know, I'm not a healthcare professional. I'm just sort of spitballing here, but I should have maybe looked into that when I had first started intermittent fasting and I could hardly keep my head up because I had so significantly cut my caloric. I had so significantly cut everything. And then I had this smaller window that I was eating. And I was like having a hard time by like 10:30 every day. I could like hardly keep my eyes open. Like, would that have been a balancing act for that to maybe help with that fatigue?
Yes, absolutely. And since we're on the topic of diet, um, I typically do not encourage patients to do a ketogenic diet. That's something that's a little bit different about our clinic. For the most part, we're doing low carb, and I think that's because I
So,
treat a lot of diabetic patients.
so for people who may not know, what's the difference between the keto diet and the low carb? Like, what's the
Yeah,
difference? Because I would think that like keto and low carb are the same thing.
sure. So a low carb diet is where you're consuming somewhere between 50 to 130 grams of carbs per day. With a ketogenic diet, technically it's anything under 50. But really, what you see more common is somewhere around 20 to 25 grams of carbs, which is not a lot. And the reason why I mainly do not like the ketogenic diet is I feel like it sets people up for failure. It is incredibly hard to maintain after the weight comes off. And most people will try to transition to a low carb diet, but don't do it successfully. And kind of like what you were talking about with Weight Watchers, it's a change in the way that you're eating, and it sets you up in a pattern for you to be successful over a long period of time. Now, you can argue that eating to maintain and eating to lose weight are two different things. I agree, but we want to develop those healthy eating patterns.
Yeah. So, and one of the things you had told me was that one of the reasons that you don't love the ketogenic diet, and especially for females, it's really hard on your heart.
Yes, and you were talking about eating high fats, and if you do not already have established cardiovascular disease, there are some studies out there that raise that question: is if you have a family history of heart disease, is that going to potentiate it a bit more? So,
No,
um, plus,
scary.
plus, I like I like to eat food because I enjoy it,
Yeah.
and
Same, bro. Same.
and I feel like you're going to miss food very quickly on the ketogenic diet. I personally have tried it in the past and hated every minute of it.
Well, like, there's some modified ketogenic diets now where you can like eat fruit. But that was one of the things that I loved about Weight Watchers is that even though fruit is higher in sugar and that can be tough if you're, diabetic or whatever. And of course, if you're diabetic, you need to talk to a healthcare professional on what kind of diet you need to be on. But like not being able to eat fruit was sort of like, but does anybody remember the food pyramid when we were kids? Like fruit is like a part of that. And like one of the ways that Weight Watchers differentiates between it. So like every food has a point value, and they redid their whole system a few years ago, maybe several years ago now, because they said people aren't getting fat and needing to go on Weight Watchers because they're overeating lean proteins, fruits, and vegetables. So all that stuff is free. If you prepare it the right way, it's free. So like fruit, you can eat as much fruit as you want and it's no points. If you put it in a smoothie, then it counts because your body absorbs that differently than if you ate it.
Sure.
And so I like that there is like that balancing act. It feels like the balanced food pyramid that we were sort of taught growing up, to eat like a balanced, healthy way. And so that's one of the things that I sort of appreciate about Weight Watchers is that it's like, okay, well, here's all these points that you could eat and it costs you nothing. Now, what they say is for me, who is 100 pounds overweight, that's going to work for a significant amount of time. But when you get down maybe to that last 20 pounds you want to lose, then you might not get to eat a banana every single day because it is a higher caloric than an apple. Okay. So they say that you do want to track that because you may find that you're eating too much fruit and that sugar is not being balanced out with some protein and things like that. And so it's not totally just like a free for all the time, but it's you can definitely get more drilled down into it when you want those last couple of stubborn pounds to lose. And that's one of the things that I love about Weight Watchers is that they've got all these different programs now, so it really fits your lifestyle and how you like to eat and what you like to eat and what makes sense for you. And it's all the calorie counting and the caloric and that's the same thing, but like the macros, and it's all of that in a point system. And it's to me, it's just a lot easier to keep up with because I find a lot of this overwhelming. Also, I'm a basic B. And so if you want to know what a basic B is, like if a 7th grade boy likes it, that's what I like to eat. Okay. I am not like I love fresh veggies. Like I really don't.
Sure.
If you're Southern, if you grew up in the southern part of the United States, your veggies were corn, mac and cheese, mashed potatoes. Those are your veggies. Those are sides. Okay.
Right.
And so, like, I hate Brussels sprouts. Like, I think they taste like dirt. But like, I like cauliflower, I like broccoli, I like carrots, I like squash, I like zucchini. So, like, I have sort of found, maybe 5, 6, 7 vegetables that I love, that I like in almost any iteration. And Skip is like a human garbage disposal. He will eat anything. Like it's, and I will say that I'm lucky because Skip stays on Weight Watchers with me. And so it's a lot easier when you have a buddy or you have a spouse or you have somebody in your home that's doing it with you. And if you don't have somebody in your home who's doing it with you, like call a friend and say, hey, I want you to go on this diet with me. Like find somebody that you can trade recipes with, like join a support group. Like I think that's really important to like not feel like you are singularly trying to like attack your healthcare all by yourself.
Absolutely. Support system is absolutely important, in your success, especially over the long run. If it's your significant other, then that's probably you're gonna be more successful there. Also, going back, since we've stayed on the topic of diet, vegetables, really the only one that I tell people to avoid is corn. I know, right?
The most delicious one.
When it comes to fruit, it really depends on how much fruit you're eating, but typically we'll say avoid your tropical fruits, your bananas, your mango, your pineapple. Stick more with berries and apples. Um,
Grapes.
Grapes, in moderation, right?
And those green globe grapes. I
Yes,
like those cotton candy grapes. I don't like that.
I've not had them.
Pat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I tell folks, you can have bread, you can have white potatoes in moderation.
But that's key is moderation. And so
Moderation.
so we talked about at the very beginning, sort of like with my story, that yes, okay, so now we know that I have this hormone deficiency and my body's not telling my brain, hey, you're full, quit stuffing your face. But I didn't get big just because I wasn't hungry. I was also overeating the wrong food. So when you're already eating the bread and the pasta and all of these things that are like already like should just be a cheat meal once a month, when you're eating it all the time and then you're overeating that, like that was not moderation. And so if you're in a position where it's really more about moderation, like that's really like what a diet, like I hate to think about being on a diet. Like it just sounds so like depressing and restrictive, which is one of the things I've liked about Weight Watchers is that it's just sort of like this is your life now. Like you can still have birthday cake, maybe not as big of a slice and maybe not every day.
Sure. Sure.
It's making better choices and being a little bit more mindful about those choices and having moderation. And so I think that any diet that you choose, it should really be about, and of course, y'all could take this for what it's worth. I mean, I'm still 100 pounds overweight and sort of getting started on all of this, but I think it's about choosing something that feels moderate, because one of the things that did not appeal to me about weight loss surgery was number one, the statistics of how many people gain the weight back. Number two, thinking that I'd have to have another surgery because I lost so much weight that I'd want to have like my stomach took up and all the flabbiness taken up. So, like the potential for more surgeries because I'm that vain and I would want to. And then the third part was that I wouldn't learn, me, Ashley Morrow, would not learn how to eat. Like it wouldn't have fixed the part of me that wanted to still overindulge or whatever. Like, and even though I couldn't physically do it, like one of the things that I've liked about Weight Watchers is it does make me more like, I probably need to go eat some fruit and I need to go eat some veggies and maybe have this kind of rice instead of that kind of rice, or maybe not as much, and sort of looking at portions. Like it's just sort of made everything. Just got a text message from somebody that says, what do you mean I can't eat birthday cake every day? You can't. You can't. If you're over 30 years old, forget it. You don't get to have birthday cake every day. Unless it's in your points.
You better be running 5 miles.
Brutal. Brutal. Anyways, I think that one of the parts to being successful with it is the moderation. It's the not feeling like you're so limited for so long that it's like, well, screw it. I'm just going to do whatever I want. This is too hard.
And that's excuse me, that's where the medication comes in too. When you're lacking that signal from the stomach to the brain that you're full, and you're waiting until those stretch receptors, those density receptors inside the stomach are triggered to the point where you're, falling back on the couch or the recliner because you're absolutely miserable, then, you know that you've overeaten. And, that's where you need to seek professional help.
Well, I will say I'm really glad that I found you and that we connected and that we're friends now and that you're, a big part of my healthcare and me getting on the road. So for those of you who may be tuning in, my goal is to lose 100 pounds and to lose 50 of that this year. And let's see, I started at when I started all this weight loss in 2018, I was at 315. Lost bunch, gained 20 pounds back. When I came to your office, I was at 299.8. I'm now at 277.8. And I made a deal with myself that 100 pounds starts at the 299.8, not at my original 315. Like I'm not giving myself some grace on that one. I hit the restart button, but technically I've lost from 315 to 277.8. So, I would just, if you're tuning in at the end, I want you to go back to the beginning and listen to my story, because I just want you to know like that you are potentially telling yourself very dangerous lies about yourself and about your self-worth that could be affecting your health in the future. And I feel like I am educated, I'm affluent, I have access to healthcare because my father's a physician, my husband is brilliant. I know a million healthcare providers, and I delayed life-changing conversations because I was so ashamed of being fat. Like I was ashamed. I was fat because I was fat. I overate because I was fat. And if I wasn't fat and if I wasn't so fat and I wasn't so lazy and I wasn't so undisciplined and I wasn't so all of these things, then I wouldn't be fat. Instead of saying, what can I do to not be fat? What can I do to make sure that my hormone levels are correct and that I'm not diabetic and that I'm not, instead of being an adult and having some really hard conversations, I delayed my health for almost 5 years. I'd gone 5 years not being satisfied by food. And I just thought it was because I was fat. I had no idea that there could be something wrong with me. And so I really want to challenge you, if nothing else, that this podcast, this episode, this live stream has encouraged you. If you're here local in the Shoals, Alabama, to reach out to Thad or to reach out wherever you're at to a healthcare provider and say, hey, I need to have a real conversation about what's going on with me. I need to have a real conversation about how to live a longer, healthier life. I mean, it's not really about vanity at some point. I mean, everybody wants to lose weight and look prettier and look thinner and be more, like the societal whatever, but I don't want to die. And I don't want to get type 2 diabetes and lose my toes. That's always our joke in our family. We're like, you gonna keep eating that candy, you're gonna lose them toes. Like, I don't want to live that life. Like, I don't want to do that. And it seems like we have maybe caught this in time that we can start backing up my A1C and start backing up that C peptide and start backing up to make myself healthier. And you know what? I deserve to be healthy. And I would like to think that the world is maybe a little bit better with me in it, that maybe I could do something great and do something to make somebody else's life a little bit better. But I can't do that if I'm not here.
Yeah, if you've not gone to a healthcare provider because you're afraid of what you may find out, make sure that you find somebody who's going to help you move from fear to empowerment once
Yeah.
you know what's going on. That's really important. And don't stop until you find that person.
That's right. Don't stop. Don't stop at the butthole that tells you, well, you just need to quit eating. That's not advice. That's not advice. That is being dismissive of you. She did not hear you. Okay. Like, I think it's so important. Like, there is sort of this power. It's called the white coat effect. And it's when like a physician has and a nurse practitioner has this sort of elevated status of credibility and of intelligence and of authority because of their education and this sort of white coat. It's a psychological thing. It's why, like, not to get too off in the weeds, but a lot of times, like, if a pharmaceutical company hires a doctor, like, a lot of these laws came into effect because people are going to be more influenced by what their doctor says because of this white coat effect. So if you get a turd healthcare professional that tells you something like, well, you just need to quit eating, like, think about that for a second. That doesn't even make sense. How are you going to live if you quit eating? That person needs a bad Facebook review and a swift kick to the nuts. I'm sorry. If they don't have nuts, kick them in the cooter. Like, that's it. That's it. Like, that is not okay. It is not okay for a healthcare professional to have that kind of conversation with a patient. And if you have had that kind of conversation with your healthcare provider, I'm telling you, Dad's telling you, that is literally, it's not okay. I can't even fathom a way to justify that conversation being okay. Period. It's not okay. It's not okay to talk to patients that way. So if you have found that, you need to go find a Thad or go find the actual Thad. Like, what's your address again?
1110 East 6th Street, Muscle Shoals.
Listen, go find a Thad. Go find Thad himself. I promise there is so much power in just saying it out loud one time. Once I said it out loud to Thad, I'd never said it to my father. I had never said it to my husband. It was like a freedom because I wasn't weighed down with the shame of not having this conversation. And then I just started talking to my friends about it. And then when my brilliant, beautiful, educated, smart friends were saying, you know what? That's me too. I've just never been brave enough to say that out loud. I'm like shouting this to everybody because if all it takes is one hard conversation to change your life, is that not worth it? What does that cost you? Nothing. Nothing. And so I hope that you understand your value and your importance and that you will take that step to have that one brave, hard conversation that can change your life. Guys, I'm so glad you tuned in. Thad, thank you so much for spending time with the Buckle Up Betties audience and answering questions. And this was amazing. And thank you so much for helping me and guiding me and being an awesome healthcare provider. And I just appreciate you so much.
Thank you, Ashley.
All right, Betties. Until next time, I'm Ashley Mara. We will see you later.
When I low, yeah, we going high. Gotta climb to the top, but we're never gonna stop. When I low, yeah, we going high. We're going high. We're going high. We're going high. Yeah, 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 yeah. In the air, yeah, I feel it. You can never leave it. When I low, yeah, we going high. Gotta climb to the top, but we're never gonna stop. When I low, yeah, we going high. Just going high. Just going high.